Imagine you're a general. You've got 30,000 soldiers. You have artillery. You have warships. You have rifles, cannons, and the full industrial might of a modernizing nation behind you. And your enemy? 500 guys with swords. Now here's the fun part. It still took you all night. Today we are going deep into one of the most legendary last stands ever recorded. We're talking about the Battle of Shiroyama, September 24th, 1877, the day the samurai era died. Not with a whisper, but with a war cry. To understand why this battle matters, we need to wind the clock back a little. It's the 1860s. Japan has just been forced open by American warships, and the entire country is having what you might describe as a national identity crisis. The old feudal system, run by samurai lords, governed by the shogunate, is crumbling. A new emperor, Emperor Meiji, takes the throne in 1868 and basically says, right, we're doing this differently. Japan is going to modernize. Japan is going to industrialize. Japan is going to be a global power. And for most people, that was exciting. But for the samurai class, it was a disaster. Their entire world, their purpose, their identity, their paycheck was being canceled by a bureaucrat with a Western suit and a clipboard. And out of all the people who were furious about this, nobody was more furious or more consequential than this man, Saigo Takamori. Saigo was kind of a legend even in his own time. Massive guy, physically enormous by 19th century Japanese standards, deeply principled, hugely respected. He'd actually helped bring Emperor Meiji to power during the Boshin War. He was one of the architects of the New Japan. And then the New Japan told him, essentially, thanks, we don't need you anymore. So Saigo went home to Kagoshima in southern Japan. Started a school, taught young men the old ways, Bushido, swordsmanship, discipline, honor, and for a while, he was basically retired. But in 1877, his students had had enough. The Meiji government was cracking down hard on the samurai class, taking their swords, cutting their stipends, basically erasing them from society. And those students marched to Saigo and said, "Sensei, lead us." And Saigo, a man who probably knew this was a terrible idea, said yes. Thus began the Satsuma Rebellion, the last major armed uprising against the Meiji government, and the last time a samurai army would ever take the field in Japanese history. Saigo's force started at around 40,000 men. They marched north from Kagoshima in February, heading for the imperial garrison at Kumamoto Castle. The plan, if you can call it a plan, was to demand an audience with the emperor and explain their grievances. With swords and rifles. They did have some rifles. Let's not be too romantic about this. The siege of Kumamoto Castle lasted 53 days. 53! And the rebels couldn't crack it. The Meiji garrison held on by their fingernails, and that delay was fatal. It gave the Imperial Army time to mobilize. The Imperial Army was no joke. These were professionally trained soldiers equipped with modern weapons, Snyder-Enfield rifles, Krupp artillery, Western military tactics. They had warships, they had supply lines, they had logistics. By summer, Saigo's army was being pushed back, steadily, relentlessly, bleeding men and ammunition with every engagement. By September 1877, what had started as 40,000 men was down to 500. 500. The survivors retreated to the city of Kagoshima, Saigo's home city, and made their final stand on a hill called Shiroyama, which translates beautifully and brutally to Castle Mountain. It's a good hill, defensible, wooded. It had been the site of an old castle, but 500 men against 30,000? No hill in the world is that good. General Yamagata Aritomo, commanding the imperial forces, did not rush. He was a meticulous man. He surrounded Shiroyama with over 30,000 troops. He dug trenches. He set up artillery positions. He had warships in the bay ready to bombard. And then he sent Saigo a letter, a very polite letter, basically saying, "You fought with honor. Surrender now. We will treat you well." Saigo didn't reply. The night of September 23, 1877, must have been extraordinary. Here are 500 men who know they absolutely know that they are not getting off this mountain. And what do? They feast. They drink sake. They compose poetry, some of them reportedly dressed in their finest ceremonial armor, because if this is the last night of the samurai era, they are going to send it off properly. There's something genuinely moving about that, isn't there? Here's a group of men at the absolute end of everything. Their cause lost, their numbers shattered, their world already gone, and they choose beauty as their final act. At approximately 3 in the morning on September 24th, the Imperial Army opened fire. The bombardment was intense. Warships in the bay added their guns to the chorus. The hill lit up, and then at dawn, 30,000 soldiers began their advance up Shiroyama. and the 500, the last samurai, charged down to meet them. There's accounts from imperial soldiers who were there, veterans of multiple campaigns, who said they had never seen anything like it. These men were fighting hand to hand in an era of industrial warfare, and for a few hours they made the imperial army pay for every meter. But there was only ever going to be one outcome. By the morning, the numbers had done their work. Saigo Takamori, the last great samurai general, was wounded, shot in the femur and the abdomen as he led the final charge. According to the most widely accepted account, and the one that's become legend, Saigo turned to his most loyal companion, Beppu Shinsuke, and said, "Beppu, I think this is a good place." And then he performed seppuku, ritual suicide. Beppu served as his kaishakunin, assisting him with a final sword stroke. It was the samurai way. It was his way. He was 50 years old. And here's a detail that tells you everything you need to know about how this moment landed. When the Imperial Army reached Saigo's body, the soldiers, the men who had just spent all night killing him and his comrades, reportedly wept. The commanding officers ensured his body was treated with full honors. He was buried with respect, because even his enemies understood they had just witnessed something irreplaceable ending. The Battle of Shiroyama lasted about 4 hours, 500 men against 30,000, and it still took until roughly 7 in the morning to finish. Do the math on that. That's extraordinary. The Emperor Meiji himself, it said, was deeply moved when he learned of Saigo's death, reportedly calling him a magnificent fellow, despite Saigo having literally just led a rebellion against his government. In 1891, the Japanese government officially pardoned Saigo posthumously. His reputation was fully rehabilitated. Today, there's a giant bronze statue of him in Ueno Park in Tokyo, the most famous meeting spot in the city. A man who died in rebellion against the state, immortalized by that same state. History is funny like that. The Battle of Shiroyama was the end of something, the samurai era, the old Japan, a world defined by personal honor and the sword. But it was also the beginning of a legend that's never really faded. 500 men choosing how they meet the end, on their own terms, in full armor, with the moon still up. If you found this story as extraordinary as I do, hit subscribe. We've got more battles, more legends, and more moments where history decided to be absolutely unhinged, coming every week on Fields of Glory. Drop a comment. I want to know, is this the greatest last stand in history, or do you have a rival? See you on the next field.